I'd like to welcome with us today Jeff Wheeler, um, best-selling fantasy author. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself and the books you write.
Hey, well, first of all, Ken, it's great to be here with you and appreciate the opportunity. So I'm a fantasy author. I also write thrillers. Wanting to write was something that has been with me since I was in junior high or high school. And about 10 years ago, I was able to leave my day job at a tech company in California and have been writing full time ever since. So I love the fantasy genre, but even though I write thrillers too, my books are what you'd probably classify as maybe PG or PG-13. I don't have any sex or swearing or graphic violence in it. I want it for grandparents and grandkids and parents and to be able to share. They're not necessarily young adult, but that's the kind of books that I write, and it's the kind of stories that I'm passionate about. So that's just a little bit about me.
Great. For those who maybe aren't familiar with your work, what are some of your um, most popular books?
I like to write lots of different series. And so when I
Okay.
started off my career, I did not want to be pigeonholed into just one world. So if you go to my website, it's actually called The Worlds of Jeff Wheeler, because
Okay.
I like to be able to invent different things. My most top selling series is my King Fountain series, followed by my Harbinger series, followed by my Muirwood series. So if you know anybody who's reading my books, it's probably one of those three that maybe they found and wanted to give a try. So
Great. Awesome. So I know your faith, influences what you write. Tell me a little bit about that.
well, faith has been a part of my life since I was a little kid. I was raised a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'm one of a few authors that actually puts that on my Amazon page, right? I spell out what my religion is. I don't believe in hiding it. But faith is more than just religion too. And I think a lot of reason my books have become popular and successful is I don't shy away from spirituality, not religion specifically, but the characters tend to be very moral, have strong moral compasses. It's very popular in fantasy to write what's called grimdark, which has more
Mhm.
morally gray characters. And but the fantasy I grew up with was more like Lord of the Rings or Lloyd Alexander, Terry Brooks, and that had clear delineations between good and evil. And those are the stories that appealed to me, and those are the kind of stories that I like to write. So I like things when faith is challenged. But I have readers from lots of different denominations or no religion at all that just like the spiritual aspects of my books. And I've had lots of just fun email conversations with readers or people that I've met over the years that I can tell that that's been attractive to them about my writing. And so I just think it's great that you don't, even you don't have to be a member of my religion to be able to appreciate that kind of fiction. And I'm glad that there's just a large number of readers out there that appreciate it, that like it, and that look for it in their writing. And I like to be able to provide those kinds of stories.
Well, I've been on your website, and to be honest, it has inspired me how open you are about your faith, and I also am a member of the same faith, and um, it's inspired me to be a little bit more forthcoming about what I believe in. But it definitely does influence my writing as well. Um, in general, how do you think someone's faith impacts or should not impact one's writing?
I think, and I know a lot of other authors. I'm part of a website called cleanauthors.com. And so we share certain elements of wanting, fiction to, just things that we can, because like if you go to a movie, there's a rating and you know what you're going to get before you
Yeah.
go. Same with playing a video game or listening to music or whatever. But there's nothing like that for books. And so there's something rarely as frustrating as maybe sinking your teeth into a novel and then a third of the way through, there's a scene that you might find objectionable, but there's no way to warn a reader. There's no
Yeah.
content advisory or things. And so I like the fact that you know authors should, maybe disclose, or there should be a way for people to know. But I think, sharing, faith or trying to uplift people through stories is something that's been done for thousands of years, not just through fantasy. But I think it's not appropriate to proselytize through it. I mean, unless you're like writing a story about a missionary or something,
Yeah.
that might be the case. That I know, I think it would turn off readers if the author had an agenda where, like, hey, you're gonna read my book and I'm trying to convert you to my particular brand of Christianity. I think it's better to let people make up their own minds about those things, and that readers will be the readers that are interested in that kind of book will be attracted to the kind of book that has faith or spirituality as themes, and that those that aren't will be attracted to other kinds of books. There's plenty of space and room. There's thousands of books that get published every single day. There's room for all sorts of points of view. So I don't shy away from it. I use magic systems as a way of introducing these kinds of concepts within my books, and that's has worked very well for me. But I think if you're really heavy-handed in it, that it just turns readers off in general, and so it turns me off as a
Yeah.
reader. And so I want to make sure I'm not trying to cross a tightrope, but I'm just trying to say I have themes that I like to write about and that readers seem to enjoy, and that's what I'm kind of trying to do. But if I was very heavy-handed about it, I think it would just turn readers off.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Can you share examples in any of your books where your beliefs had a significant influence?
Well, almost all of them, all of my books, all of my stories. For example, the kind of my breakaway series, my Muirwood series. That's the one that landed me my publishing contract with Amazon Publishing, and it's kind of got this medieval fantasy flair to it. But I built it based on that, where magic is taught at these sacred structures called abbeys, based on medieval abbeys and stuff. But you don't go there to become a monk. You go there to learn magic, and that magic is something that it's not about casting a spell so much about, but aligning your will to the power of the medium, which is the source of magical power within that world. And so people who are members of our faith will see, things reminiscent of maybe temples, the ball or compass that you might find in the Book of Mormon. There's lots of different things that it might be Easter eggs for somebody who is a member of the faith. But I've also seen some of those same symbols in medieval architecture and things as a history major in college. And so as I would study different things, those kinds of symbols would jump out to me. Even like gargoyles, statues of creatures that were used to ward off evil spirits back in the Middle Ages. I incorporate that kind of stuff into my writing, and I just found it added another dimension. Instead of having people believe that all religion is a hoax, like, no, that there are people that are smart and intelligent and can follow or find faith in those kinds of things, and why not incorporate some of those symbols. So Muirwood's a great example from my writing, but in all of my worlds, there tends to be little Easter eggs in there that people might discover.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What would you say to those who might be a little timid about sharing their beliefs for fear of offending readers or becoming victim to today's cancel culture?
Well, it's a legitimate concern, and I've had it myself. I've been at Comic Cons and have been challenged over issues, social issues and things, and it's uncomfortable, and it's can be super difficult um, to be able to do those things. But I have found that we're probably too timid about sharing beliefs or sharing these things, and to not share it just because we're afraid is I think the wrong approach. I think it's important to be respectful, that there are people that come have a variety of worldviews and different beliefs of what they consider appropriate, and I don't try to condemn anybody else who doesn't, who doesn't have faith or believes in things that are different than what I believe. That rather than trying to isolate and draw battle lines, I think it's more important to build bridges of
Yeah.
understanding. And I have family members that are in different communities and stuff, and the more I understand about where they come from or people that I know, um, I think the more love and acceptance and tolerance we should have. And isn't that what Christ taught? I mean, who were the people he ministered to? It wasn't the religious leaders. It was the people on the outskirts of society, the people who are outcasts. And why should not people of faith try to build those kinds of bridges? And so, yeah, sometimes you're going to get called out and that, but I just think the advantage of learning and building bridges is so much more valuable. And I haven't had, I mean, I've had people, in book reviews, call me, not so great names and accuse me of things, but the majority of the reviews are very positive and come from a variety of people, but from a variety of perspectives. So I don't regret at all, kind of putting myself and my faith out there. I haven't really suffered horrible negative consequences from it. If anything, it's been a signal to readers of the kinds of things they can expect out of my books. And so why not?
I love your perspective on bridge building. I often think of that as, instead of focusing on our differences, and let's focus on those things that we share, our shared beliefs, and find common ground where we can discuss things in a in a very civil manner and in an uplifting manner.
And to go to your point, books are a great way of doing that.
Yeah,
People love to talk about books that they've
yeah,
read, about stories that have inspired them. And even though a reader might not have my same views on things, the fact that I can connect with them through characters and through worlds and things, what a great thing. And that allows them to share and talk to other people. It kind of creates a bridge into my world and gives me a bridge into theirs. So, books are things people love to share, and that's
yeah.
wonderful for authors. And so like I said, there's been some negative, but the majority has been positive.
Great. Um, do you have any favorite authors whose faith impacted their writing and impacted you in the reading of their work?
No, absolutely. I know a lot of other authors that are within my religion, and so I won't even mention those. But some of the ones that have inspired me over the years, C.S. Lewis,
Yep,
right?
yep,
How many people bash on C.S. Lewis for, not many, right? Because his writing is so good, but there are strong spiritual themes that inspired me. Um, I found I found Philip Pullman's series of, The Golden Compass and Subtle Knife, and it has a lot of religious themes in the magic and stuff like that, and it's kind of anti-religion, but it was very overt. And I loved the books, and I got into it, and in fact, reading that series it made me want to be more overt in sharing a contrast, right,
yeah.
with what's going on. One of my all-time favorite authors is Frances Hodgson Burnett. She wrote The Secret Garden, and she wrote A Little Princess, and there's spiritual themes within her books that have appealed to me too, over the years as well. So, yeah, those are just some of the authors, just to name a few.
Well, and one of my favorite authors and author that really got me into reading and writing, many don't know this, but J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings was very influenced by his beliefs in Christianity, and there are moments in that series where things happen that are very symbolic of Christian beliefs. that many don't catch. Um,
But they're there. They're
they're
there.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's a great
And
movie about Tolkien's life that I watched a couple years ago called Tolkien, and you can see how his experiences in war and his experience in university and relationships all spilled over into
yeah,
his writing. And so it does with us, right? Those things spill over into my writing too. And so you don't hide it, but it just put it out there so that people can appreciate it, and I've just found people connect with it
yeah,
very strongly. So why not? Those themes are you can write PG kind of rated books, but if it's lacking morality, it's not always necessarily going to appeal either. It's not just the lack
yeah.
of certain things, but it's what it has, what it adds that is powerful.
Wonderful. As you write from a position of faith, how do you make sure your books are of a nature that they would be embraced by people of other faiths or those who don't practice any particular faith? And we've kind of talked about that, but go ahead.
Well, my answer to that question, Ken, is, all of my and authors basically we get paid to torture our characters. I
Yes.
mean, if all the story was one good thing happening after another, it would be boring and nobody would want to read it. And so tension and whether it's within the plot between characters, there's so many different ways to layer in and tension. And I have found that even people that again who aren't religious, they can see how my characters react to the struggles that they go through, and I put them through some pretty hard struggles. I mean, when a chapter makes me cry and wipe away tears, um, then absolutely I know that I'm going to resonate with humans on a human scale. And so even people that aren't religious can see how somebody who with ethics and integrity reacting to an incredibly challenging situation, they can draw courage from that. They can draw, like wow, I've had many readers say like, it's, Jeff, your books have led me to want to be a better person, right? Not join my religion, but just seeing how, having examples. And isn't that what storytelling really is? That whether you're reading a story from the Old Testament or the New Testament or whatever, it's how people react to hard situations in a positive, uplifting way that inspires people. That's what stories are. That's why I think even our brains are wired to receive stories like that, because they're a way of saying, wow, if I was in that situation, I know what I would do, but look what they did, and I'm inspired. And we've got to have a balance of good choices and bad choices too. We
Yeah.
don't always make awesome choices. It's often the consequences of our choices that teach us so much. And learning, having readers groan like, oh, I wouldn't have done that, but I can see why they did that. It's realistic. And I think that that's just a way, and what makes storytelling so powerful in general. So it's something that we just taps into our inner brains and our inner desires to just learn from each other and to borrow experiences from others.
This next question, I think you've already answered in a variety of ways, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Um, how do you hope your books impact others?
Well, the hope that I think every author has is that we'll make a difference to somebody. And I can't tell you how meaningful it is to me as an author when I get an email from a reader. I got one recently um, where she told me that by reading my books, she decided not to take her life. And I can only imagine how hard, to be in a association as a young adult, as a teenager, to feel so hopeless.
Yeah,
But then to have read a story, just a story, it's made up in my imagination, but where the characters decided to persevere, even though their challenges were completely overwhelming. And then to have somebody say, that inspired me. That inspired me to keep going. It's inspired me to apply for college and to get into university and to start another chapter of my life. I mean, it's just so humbling that just words were able to do that for somebody. So I think every author's hope is that we make a difference in some way, that we inspire people, that we entertain people. That's what literature does. That's why I've read books my whole life, right? To be inspired, to find ways to learn and expand my horizons. And it's just a great gift to be able to have that reach to hundreds and thousands, if not millions of people. It's a responsibility that I feel keenly, to be sure.
I love that. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Any last words you'd like to share?
I don't know if any of your audience are writers themselves. I've definitely found within the fantasy genre, there's a lot of people who read it but also want to write it. And I get asked for writing advice like regularly. I try to
Mhm.
put stuff on my website that is trying to be helpful. Um, Today's publishing world is so complex. It's even more complex than when I got my break, over 10 years ago, right? When, you know, like most publishing stories are, you submit to an agent and then they finally accept you and then they land you with a publisher. I got rejected by all the agents that I submitted to, dozens and dozens of them. And my story is very unique because my publisher literally came to me asking to publish my book that I had self-published and put out there in the world, that people were liking it and reading it and stuff. My parting advice is, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be an author, you've got to make an investment in it. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of learning. And there are so many more ways to learn the craft today than just reading a couple, kind of go-to books that everyone talked about, like Stephen King's, a decade or two ago. There's classes, there's conferences. I offer writing classes on my website, the ones that I teach at conferences, along with other authors that I know and have partnered with. You have to make an investment in yourself if you're going to be able to do it, because gone are the days when a reader is going to be patient enough to slog through typos or incomplete world building or characters that aren't well fleshed out or plots that aren't well fleshed out. They're very unforgiving. They expect things that they read to be more professional. So therefore, in order to produce something that's more professional, that takes an investment of time and energy and often money to be able to learn about the craft to be able to do it. So if a lot of readers like, oh, I've wanted to write a fantasy novel, I've got this idea tickling in my head. That's awesome. You got to start somewhere, and the idea is a great place to start. But learning how to structure it, learning how to develop characters, learning how to do fight scenes, learning the different kinds of fiction that can be different ways of telling stories. There's a lot of ways to shortcut some of that learning curve, and taking classes and learning is something that I wish existed, back in the day when I was in high school. Now there's awesome writers conferences targeting teenagers, like Teen Author Boot Camp, and a new one coming out next year called StoryCon that I'm going to be going to. That's going to be in Salt Lake. It's going to be huge. It's going to have some of the top authors in the industry there. Why not learn? Why not take advantage of that to learn and maybe shortcut some of the things? One of my novels I rewrote 7 times in order to get it to the point where I felt like I could publish it. And wow, if I could have learned what I know now to speed up that process and not have to rewrite something 7 times, my goodness, that would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of pain and perseverance to be able to do that. So that's certainly some of, I think, advice or some parting counsel I would give, because I get asked a lot, like, what do I do? Like, it's just like, oh, you just wave a wand and poof, you're going to be. No, it's a lot of work, and the more you can educate yourself on the process, the faster you're going to be able to get through that learning curve.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. This has been wonderful. It's been great to get to know you a little bit better, and just to chat. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you sharing your time with us. Thank you.
My pleasure, Ken. Thanks for having me today.